On today's show, the Cleveland Cavaliers won their first preseason game. We'll talk about that and more. I want to thank you for making Locked On Cavs your first listen every day. Remember, we are free and available wherever you get your podcasts.
You are Locked On Cavs, your daily Cleveland Cavaliers podcast.
All right, the music you heard on the way in is from our friends at Asteroid. Check them out on Apple Music or Spotify. I am Chris Manning. I cover the Cavs and the NBA for places like Diamond UPROXX and SB Nation for the Sword. That man is Evan Dammarell. He is at Down Euclid as well as for the Sword. Cavs won their first preseason game. They are now 1-2 in the meaningless portion of the schedule, but they pick up a 105-99 win against the Atlanta Hawks. Obviously, no Evan Mobley. Dean Wade does not play as well. Caris LeVert gets the night off to get some rest, and Kevin Love is out as well. So, Evan, I think the big takeaway from this game for me more than anything else is that I think even though we don't see like Allen and Garland and Mitchell close, even though all those guys are healthy in what became a close game. And, you know, this obviously you're getting Diakite, who's like not going to be in the rotation when the year starts, all of this stuff. This is probably the most kind of complete look of them we have seen in the preseason in my mind.
Yes, yeah, to an extent. I mean, Game 1, we saw Kevin Love and Dean Wade and Caris LeVert all out there for the Cavs, so I think that's maybe more of the like quote unquote complete look. But like in terms of just offensive and defensive execution, and front of the program, Denny Cunningham asked JB about this a little bit, not JB Bickerstaff about this, but Donovan Mitchell, where this is kind of somewhat more like a regular season game compared to the 3 games they played in total so far. The Cavs have, and you definitely got those vibes, especially because the starters were playing some minutes pretty late into the fourth quarter, and then you saw both coaching staffs just kind of call off the dogs towards the end and just saw some guys maybe get some burn in the last 2 to 3 minutes or so. So it certainly felt like more of a complete game for the Cavs. It felt like they had some offensive presence on the interior and on the outside on the perimeter. They ran a lot of interesting set plays. We saw a lot of shine from guys like Cedi, Osman, and Isaac Okoro, who we'll probably touch on a lot in this episode. And defensively, just like the most impressive part of it is like Darius Garland and the Cavs in general just did a really phenomenal job defending Trae Young and just kind of frustrating him the whole night. Where like this was a game that the Cavs, I wouldn't say more or less imposed their will, but like we're at least getting closer to executing what their top tier hopes are on the defensive side of the ball, where like they don't look as flustered and haphazard. And I made a note of this. I think it maybe helped that Atlanta started with a more traditional lineup versus Philly going really small in game 2. That just kind of threw the Cavs through the loop for a little bit there. And I think that let them really just get the ball rolling there. But yeah, this is probably the most complete game in terms of play style. I just think complete-wise, like depth-wise, game 1's your best example.
Yes, I think the difference for me and I kind of put more weight into this, is just that like Donovan Mitchell opened the fourth quarter. Darius Garland came back for a little stretch in the fourth quarter. Like we actually saw these guys in that context instead of like them getting shut down after halftime. And like obviously again, you said Caris LeVert didn't play. He's probably going to start at the 3. Dean Wade didn't play, and we expect him to be in the rotation. Kevin Love, who's obviously going to be in the rotation and was really key last year, did not play. Evan Mobley. Donovan Mitchell shouted this out in his post-game media availability. They haven't even played with Evan Mobley yet, and there's still going to be a lot of learning when they get everything kind of back and all these guys are on the floor together. I think the idea for me, Evan, is like Mitchell talked about this, and he's like they're learning the language of what's going on. If you want to take him at his word on this fully, and like without having watched the game back in whatever way, like I don't want to say if I agree or disagree necessarily, but he's saying like we're getting shots, like they got the shots, him and Darius specifically got the shots they wanted versus taking bad shots. They're getting in looks, they're adding in little wrinkles and things they're comfortable with, and that is more telling me that they kind of at least they felt functional to me in a way they maybe didn't at times in the 2 games against Philly, maybe particularly game 2. The Cavs felt kind of functional. And we'll get into some of the role player stuff contributing as to why. But that's to me where I think, okay, maybe they're figuring some stuff out a little bit here. And we're getting a little bit of a glimpse of what this is going to look like in some capacity.
I agree. I think with Darius Garland, you saw him being functional from wire to wire when he was on the floor, like from the beginning to end. He was the engine of this Cavs offense. Donovan Mitchell struggled in the first half shooting-wise. JB Bickerstaff shared with the media post-game after this one that they ran a set play to get Donovan kind of going, just kind of have him feel comfortable again, get his shot, see the ball go into the rim, the situations like that. And then he saw Mitchell kind of snowball a little bit and then really vamp off of Garland as well. And then you saw those two kind of having these interesting plays where like they're playing off one another, where like Donovan was driving towards the rim and he kicked the ball out to Darius, who's just hanging out on the perimeter. Where I agree, the more comfortable these two get playing without the ball in their hands, the more functional and pretty much lethal this Cavs offense is going to be. And the same can go for Karis LeVert, Isaac Okoro, Cedi Osman, et cetera, for the wing spot, because I think with this kind of spread pick and roll offense the Cavs run, where like they are looking to feed their big men, especially Evan Mobley, Jared Allen, and Kevin Love, like they're going to be relying on Mitchell and Garland getting them the ball. But having like your wing guys and your guys at the guard position being comfortable playing off ball really unlocks a lot of things, especially if Evan Mobley is an offensive hub too. But we saw a lot of good. I think this was the best game the Cavs have played. I think clearly we can say that, especially after they won. We saw some interesting just breakouts from certain role players too. But like when it comes to this top level talent, sans Evan Mobley, who hasn't played yet, and maybe he plays against Orlando, but I doubt it. This was a good game for the Cavs. Like you get a glimpse and kind of an idea of how they're going to function a little bit. And it's still pretty clear to me it's going to be a bit of a work in progress to start the season. Like they still really got to figure it out, especially when the intensity goes up a couple notches, when these games actually start meaning something. But for now, these are encouraging signs and kind of encouraging vignettes and snippets of film they can break down to kind of figure out, okay, this is what's working. We can throw out what's not working, and we can start to really deep dive into what's working and like maximize our potential with that, and then just grow upon that.
I suspect, Evan, that when we get 10 games into the regular season, 15 games, 20 games, I think the defense is going to, like, we can't really even say what that looks like now just because Mobley's not playing and he's so key to that. I kind of think the offense is going to look like even, I think we're going to keep seeing this evolve. Something we're not going to hit anywhere else that I think, though, will hit their ground running, and I think we're already seeing is that, like, Donovan Mitchell, the things in him and Garland having offensive chemistry, I think is just there. Like, I think it's just there. Like, there's the play, I think second quarter, Mitchell puts his shoulder into a defender, kicks it out to Garland in the corner. Like, they have a little give and go. Like, they are very good at already kind of improvising and working in sync in that way. And I think, like, as it gets figured out, I think particularly in offense, I think like they are gonna carry some of this. Would be my guess. Is that like these two guys, because of how talented they are, because of how they fit together, I think we're gonna see them carry the Cavs through some of these waters and as they figure stuff out.
I asked Darius Garland about this actually to an extent. He gave me a little nugget that is applicable to this. I asked him, like, again, they run a lot of spread pick and roll. The ball is going to be in either his or Donovan Mitchell's hands more often than not, especially in late game situations. And I asked him, like, how lethal is Karis LeVert going to be in those scenarios where, like, you have him playing off ball as a slasher, a spot up shooter, everything else in between too. And he said, like, yeah, he's going to be really lethal because he's just like, I don't know how defenses are going to be able to contain both Donovan and I when we're actually hitting on all cylinders. And it's a pretty fair assessment because gravity, everything else in between, but yeah, like you said, there's like already an established chemistry and rapport. I think those two having runs together in the summer and just kind of being friends off the court, and maybe like that little brother, big brother relationship they have a bit too helps as well. But it's going to be interesting to see what heights this group reaches early in the season, and then like, you know, they just keep ascending and like what peak they hit when the season does come to a close for them. And then we can reevaluate from there. But yeah, now the early returns, 3 preseason games in, it's pretty promising. Like game 1 against Philly, pretty good performance. Game 2, a little hit or miss, but pretty solid overall. Game 3, like it clicked on both ends for them.
All right, after the break, we're going to get into giving out our game awards, which every night will be MVP, our stat of the night, and then our play of the night. But first, I'm going to tell everyone about our friends at BetOnline. BetOnline is your number one source for your pro and college football betting needs and sports info this season and all season. Find all of the latest Football League developments, game matchup news, and podcasts, including the upcoming weekend slate of games. BetOnline is also your continued source for your sports wagering information, including live betting, esports, and scores. It is the fastest and easiest way to check in on all your favorite sports and events, including MLB, MMA, boxing, and golf. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. Evan, for instance, Evan Mobley is sitting at plus 1,600 to win Defensive Player of the Year. The Cavs over-under, meanwhile, is up at 48. It was at 46.5. It's now been bumped up to 48.
You still take that over, folks.
You can get that over at minus 130. The under is at plus 100. That's BetOnline. That's where the game starts. Go check them out today for all of the latest and greatest. All right, back here on Locked On Cavs. I'm Chris Manning. That's Evan Dammarell. Evan, let's go to MVP. You go first. Who's your MVP of this game?
So I saw who your picks were, and I will let you have both of those guys. I'm going to go with Darius Garland just because, like I said, from wire to wire, he was ebbing and flowing this offense. He was actively looking to get his guys the ball in the spots they prefer. He was setting up his teammates very nicely all over the floor. Again, I think this is what you really notice with the gravity Donovan Mitchell possesses is Darius has way less defensive pressure, and it allows him to operate and just really facilitate as that lead guard for the Cavs. And it's also just nice to see him effectively run a pick and roll with Jared Allen that results in a lob and a dunk too, which is always just fun to see. But Darius wire to wire was consistently the best player for the Cavs, and the engine that drove this offense, and also his defense on Trae Young was really good too. So that's my MVP pick. What's your pick?
I give a co-MVP here. It's Isaac Okoro and Cedi Osman. This will link into my stat of the night when we get to that. But those two guys were pretty lights out. This was one of the more complete offensive games I've ever seen Isaac Okoro play. That may sound like hyperbole. I kind of believe it to be true based on what he did. This was a really optimized, kind of locked-in version of Cedi Osman, a guy that I think you could put in your rotation to start the year and try to make it work. I don't know if you're going to get this. You're not going to get these performances from these guys every night, but on a night in particular where shooting-wise, Mitchell and Garland were not A++ kind of making shots. Garland airballed a floater at one point. Mitchell, he had a wide open mid-range shot after a really nice move, and then threw a pass to Jared Allen for like no reason. Like there's just these, they were getting to spots and like not hitting everything, and some of that got wiped away by the fact that Okoro and Osman had really, really positive games. And among the role players that were playing tonight, obviously again, no LeVert, no Wade, no Love. They were clearly kind of the standouts among guys that we expect to be in the rotation. All right, Evan, your stat of the night is what?
The Cavs had 30 assists on 40 makes overall. Not bad. I think that's what you want to see. Darius Garland, I believe, had 12, 13 assists off the top of my head. I don't have the stat sheet in front of me, but it's a simple thing. I think, folks, if you're a regular listener to this show, and we used to do these segments last season, if the Cavs kind of have the rock move and are just maximizing and getting everybody involved, it's just going to lead to team success. And you saw it against Atlanta where they're up 18, then they had their lead erased, and then they went back up on Atlanta. Like, they kept the ball moving, they stayed within their system, and they played their brand of basketball. And seeing the 30 assists on 40 makes is indicative of that.
I'm curious, Evan, to see like if this becomes a thing where like their ball movement is popping like this, because I think they'll be a lot better for it. They've hinted at how they've talked about Garland and how Garland was used last year, that I think they want to take pressure off him, and I think some of that is just better ball movement, is guys moving more. And maybe that helps guys like Okoro and Osman.
You saw tonight like a lot of just small actions before they like even ran a pick and roll where like they would run off ball screens to get Donovan Mitchell more open, and he'd scream towards the corner, or then you'd see Jared Allen set the pick and let Darius just facilitate from there. And you saw kind of some good options. Whoever was the ball handler would like drive to the basket, then they have a dump off option, and whether the big man who's rolling, or they have a guy who's on the perimeter in the corner, because defenses usually collapse on one of Garland or Mitchell. Like, this is a good way to go about it. And yeah, it's going to be interesting to see kind of how this evolves over time. But yeah, this was a good sign of things hopefully to come.
That leads into my stat of the night, which is the fact that Cedi, Osman, and Isaac Okoro were combined 13 of 21 from the field. Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell were combined 16 of 47. For the Cavs to get production like that out of Okoro, I think especially, and also Osman was 4-4 from 3 in the second quarter. Just like really nice empowerment, positive nights of your role players. Well, I think we're going to let's talk at length, Evan, about Okoro in segment 3. Because I think he deserves it based on the shine he kind of had from this game. But like Osman and him were really, really good. They were making shots. They were confidently taking shots. I think like in just particular, if you can get some nights this year where like, some of these guys can step up as you need to, and that can become at least something you feel better about some of these guys as offensive players off of your superstars, off of your all-stars, I would think I would feel good. I would just feel good kind of coming off this game. The vibes about this game would be kind of positive.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think having role players being efficient with the more limited shot opportunities they have is ideal because, yeah, Mitchell and Garland were 16 of 47 from the floor combined tonight. I think that is indicative of just the fact that those two are probably going to be your 1 and 2 offensively, with Mobley being 3, Allen being 4, and then you trickle down from there just in the grand hierarchy of the Cavs offensively. So when you have guys like Okoro and Osman being highly efficient with the touches they get, it's probably going to result in a win.
What's your play of the night?
So I want to give an honorable mention to Isaac Okoro driving up to the basket and dumping it off to Mamadi Diakite near the low post. Like, it was just a really smart read on Okoro's part, where like you saw him kind of have a whole full head of steam, and you saw this a few times actually. Like, Atlanta would wall him off the basket, and he would smartly dribble back out and just give it to the point guard and just kind of reset on offense. But this is a scenario where Atlanta did wall him off, but he still didn't have a good look, but he dumped it off to the right player, and it was the right call. But actually, my play of the night pick is Darius Garland playing really good defense on Trae Young that actually led to an Isaac Okoro basket on the fast break at the first quarter. I believe he stole the ball or either blocked it from Trae Young off the top of my head, and then he kicked it ahead to Lamar Stevens, who was streaking next to Isaac Okoro, and then Stevens made the right read because nobody closed out on Okoro, and Okoro got an easy bucket. Like, just stuff like that is good, and I think seeing Darius Garland being the defensive initiator of that is kind of rare sometimes, but if you get that effort from him and if he's able to expend more energy on defense, the Cavs could be very cagey and interesting on both ends of the floor.
Yeah. My play is also a Darius Garland one. Darius Garland threw this pass over his shoulder out of a pick and roll Jared Allen to Cedi Osman for 3 in the second quarter. The read he makes here is just, I think, encapsulates a lot of what makes Darius special. He's reading in this play DeAndre Hunter, who is a pretty good defender, kind of big in the passing lanes. He's reading Hunter helping off of Cedi, who's just one pass away, and he times everything so perfect. He goes to the left with his dribble. They kind of get into the pick and roll. Allen starts to dive. They kind of close that off, and he goes, okay, I know that DeAndre was already kind of heading over towards me more to try to pressure me and keep me in mind and clog the passing lane at least a little bit. He's able to put this pass pinpoint into Cedi's hands for Cedi to take a 3. He makes it simple for Cedi to just catch and fire and go before DeAndre Hunter can even react and get back. I think just really impressive passing from Darius Garland, and I don't know how it's one of those passes I'm curious to go back and watch the tape on it, just because it popped where the press row is at Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse for us. Is like we're looking kind of right at that. This is on our side of the court. We're looking right at it, and it just pops, and that was cool to me. He's such a good passer. He's gifted. He's gifted. Yeah, he's going to just rack up assists like that for forever and ever and ever. Okay, one more break. Let's come back and talk about Isaac Okoro, who played phenomenally in this game. All right, last segment on Lockdown Cavs. Evan, Isaac Okoro, again, I think one of the better performances we've seen from him. Looked pretty confident offensively, looked put together, in control, willing to take shots. His final stat line for this game, 32 minutes, 7 of 9 from the field for 16 points, 2 of 4 from 3, had 2 rebounds, 3 assists, did fall out, but whatever, 3 steals as well, which you kind of like seeing 3 turnovers. I thought 2 things really stood out to me. Number one, I thought he ran the floor very well, getting into spots where he had that really nice cut that I missed live and had to watch the replay of in the fourth quarter, where he cuts from the baseline, dunks.
I'm the one I'm like, Chris, Isaac Okoro cut. Like, what? I missed it?
Yeah, this was like after he had like a beautiful Euro step, and like I don't think I've ever seen him hit a Euro step not in transition.
Yeah, Isaac Okoro opened his back up tonight and showed some stuff offensively, and two good plays in a row on it for him.
Yeah, so there's that part of it, and then there's also the shooting. He still like waits like half a second before he is shooting threes, but he took them confidently. He took them willingly. I found just him, the way he played, the way he looked offensively, that kind of, even if he's not going to hit the kinds of threes he did it over and over and over again, and he's not going to have this perfect of an offensive night, I tend to think that like this is, if you could bottle this up or show him the film or whatever it is, and you can be like, Isaac, like more of this, please. I feel like this is what you want from him in a lot of ways. Yeah,
I agree with you, and you hope that he can carry this momentum. Again, we don't know if he'll play against Orlando on Friday, but if he doesn't, he carries this momentum with him into Toronto. JB, I believe, mentioned that JB or somebody else mentioned that the Cavs are probably going to have a scrimmage or something just in-house just before they head to Toronto, just to keep their legs kind of fresh. Not fresh in a sense, but like keep their mind and body physically in the right spot, because they're going to have such a long layoff between their fourth preseason game and this one. And Okoro's performance tonight was really good. I think Cedi Osman's performance tonight was really good. I think both of them for sure have a spot in this rotation heading into the season no matter what. It feels kind of like a sure thing that like, hey, Caris LeVert could be the starting three for this team. Like JD said pregame that he hasn't settled on Caris LeVert being the starting three, but he made it clear that Caris has done everything right up to this point to earn that spot as a starting three for the Cavs. And hey, if Isaac Okoro and Cedi Osman continue to have nights like this, I'm not going to say like, hey, they're going to supplant LeVert suddenly. Maybe Okoro has a better chance than Osman in my opinion, but they're at least going to push him. And I think if you have that healthy competition, it's going to make things really good. And to your point, if you're able to kind of bottle this up and just like encapsulate this and say, like, hey, Isaac, we need more of this, I think that they are going to say that, obviously. But you just got to hope on the Okoro side of things, like you can just consistently get performances like this, because let us not forget, 2 games prior, he went 0 of 2 from three-point range and looked a little bit flat in his shots. And then tonight, like you said, there was a slight hesitation at times, but he looked more confident out there shooting it. There was some air under his shots. His first 3-point attempt he missed, but like he didn't hesitate. He didn't think about it. He just pulled up and shot it. And then soon after in the first quarter, he hit 2 3-pointers pretty quickly back to back. And you just need more of that. And it's the playmaking, it's the defense, it's everything in between. And I think JB saying that hey, we had to put him in a box last season just because we needed spacing around Mobley and Allen, and the Cavs were winning, so they didn't have the runway to let Okoro learn from his mistakes because things were just kind of like delicately balanced. Now that they have this Donovan Mitchell star power shot, they can probably let Okoro live and learn from some of his mistakes, but also just give him a little bit more of a runway and a little bit more freedom to do things on offense that maybe he normally doesn't do, like the Euro step.
The Euro step just takes like that tells me there's confidence that he's hitting that in the lane like that, was especially because earlier in the game there's a play where the Cavs swung him back the ball because Trae Young ended up on him one-on-one on the wing, and what happened was Okoro doesn't get a shot off. He just bowls over Trae Young and commits an offensive foul. Like, and it was like, okay, like chill out. Like it was just like very clear, like, okay, this is and then he pulls this off later, which was a really good sign. I think it is more of like, to me, Evan, the box has changed. The box is a little bit roomier now, because if you have Mitchell and he provides some of the spacing, and Okoro maybe can cut a little bit freer, and maybe he just is better. Like maybe there also is just some improvement here that we'll see if that bears out over time. Mm-hmm. Maybe that just makes him more comfortable, and we'll see going forward too. Like, is this like a one-off thing, or was this just like a one-off, like kind of fluky preseason thing, or was this real? Like we're gonna find out and have like a better take on this. Yeah. It's interesting that like the through line of people being asked about him post game was like, just don't think. Like Isaac, just shoot the basketball, and just very clearly they just like want him to at least try.
Since his rookie season, it's been hard because he didn't come in as like projected as a plus shooter, and then had to kind of obviously work on it. And then last season was just odd, and it's the COVID shortest season as well for his rookie season. But like that's been a through line for his entire career. It's just like Kevin Love's like we tell him to shoot it, JB's like we tell him to shoot it, Darius is like we tell him to shoot it. Like they keep telling everyone keeps just telling him like, hey Isaac, if you're on the perimeter, just shoot it. And Donovan Mitchell said, listen, I don't care if he goes 0 for 10. I want him to keep shooting it because I want him to feel comfortable out there on the perimeter. And now that the Cavs kind of have that luxury, they can maybe afford Okoro to miss a few more 3-pointers. But again, if he finds consistency, and like I know advanced stats folks say the hot hand fallacy isn't a thing or the hot hand method isn't a thing, but I think there is momentum that you can build. And if you feel more comfortable and confident when you see your shots going in from the perimeter, like you're going to be keeping defenses honest. And this is where we circle back to, sure, Isaac Okoro may not start, but when he does play, he's not an offensive liability where it causes opposing teams to have somebody sag off him and frustrate Garland or Mitchell, or just kind of bog things down for Mobley and Allen on the interior as well.
If this offensive game, also to be clear, the only good offensive game he has played in the preseason
in a while.
Let's say like
even like the end of last season too.
Yes, maybe this is one of the. Maybe this is like the 100% outcome of Okoro games this year. Like this is like the best you're gonna get: 16 points, some shooting, all that stuff. Right. If he can, if this is like a sign that like he is more solid than you might have thought and more just sort of competent in these ways, it just makes it will make the life of the team so much easier. And like,
oh yeah,
this is a big year for Okoro. He'll become extension eligible next summer. I would be surprised if they did something next summer unless it's like kind of the right team friendly kind of thing. But he's at that point. It's year 3. We're gonna start figuring out kind of what your place is in the league in a lot of ways. And I am curious.
I'm curious as well, and we are a little bit starting to be pressed for time. But let's just shout out Cedi Osman as well. Like played really freaking well. Like I think.
Yeah,
you saw some glimpses of how he was properly employed. Like you were talking to some folks on your side of the press box just about how like his numbers were probably absurd when he was deployed with Ricky Rubio, but you saw Darius. Like,
I look at them every time, and I don't think they're real. And then I'm like, oh, these are real, and like they're absurd. Like the on-offs with him and Rubio are like, whoa.
And that's the thing is, I think if you are not, I think I know if you're the Cavs, and again, I think Cedi Osman has more or less deserved a spot in this rotation. Like, if you ask me today who your 9-10 man rotation is, it's Garland, Mitchell, LeVert, Mobley, Allen, and then you have Love, Okoro, Osman, Neto for now, but then eventually Rubio, and then probably Lopez. Oh, no, Wade, and then either Neto or Lopez to start the season. And you roll with that, like that's a lot of shooting off the bench in theory, but if you're able to deploy Cedi with a point guard who kind of just gets him some steady looks so he's not so erratic as a shooter, like the similar stuff they did with Ricky Rubio last year, like they deployed him with a point guard who consistently was getting him looks and in spots where he likes it, and ditto for Kevin Love. Like the Cavs could build really easy momentum by just using these Garland Osman sets, and maybe that's the way they do is they send Mitchell to the bench first in the first quarter, they let Garland play out the remainder of the first, and they get Osman snowballing a little bit, and then you bring in Neto and Mitchell to start the second quarter, and then you can kind of pick up where you left off, but let Cedi float on the perimeter and let Donovan just drive and kick and do whatever he wants out there.
Yes, I'm curious to see, like, we kind of got a taste of it tonight. Like, Mitchell started the fourth with Allen. I'm curious to see how they will stagger that ultimately when we get to the regular season.
You did note, and I agree with you, that I'm curious if they go with Mitchell and Mobley at times, too, just because...
I'm all in on that. I
am, too. It's just more so because Mitchell isn't a comfortable throwing lobs. Like, he never really did that Rudy Gobert, but, like, if he suddenly unlocks that facet of his game, I think Rudy's going to say Sacre Bleu. And Allen's just going to benefit from it even more. But The Mobley stuff is interesting just because, like, driving to the basket, physicality, the shooting aspect as well, like pick and pop and stuff too. Like, there's a lot of multifaceted ways you can go about it. But, like, I understand the ethos of what they're building. It's very similar to what they're kind of trying to replicate what that made Donovan so successful in Utah last season at times when they just put the ball in his hands and said, all right, go to work.
Well, and he talked about postgame. How he's like, look, there's sets that I am bringing from Utah. Like, he set the pin down for a big and, like, just stuff that way where it's like you're going to do some certain things. One last little random small thing from that, this is like an in-person thing or not. Robin Lopez got beat a couple times by Clint Capella just by being quicker than him.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious to see, like, if he looks... If like Mobley can make what Lopez does, which is like be in solid position, a little bit slow, all that stuff, but like makes Lopez look more functional. Or if what Lopez looks like once this kind of gets rolling and if he plays or not.
Yeah.
But like I'm curious how much Mobley's going to kind of cover up for some of those spots where, like, hey, if he's guarding a 5 who can roll and move around, he can get picked on a little bit. And also Trae Young's a really good passer. DeJounte Murray's a good passer. Like, these guys that they had throwing passes are very accurate in that sense, but just a little something that kind of popped when we were watching.
Something else that popped for me is young Chris Manning in a Yankees jersey, folks. We know who he's actually rooting for in the ALDS. That's what popped for me tonight. And shouts to Chris's mom for posting that. Like,
yeah, and who told you about it, Evan?
You did. I want to befriend your mom, so she'll just text me baby photos of you and like photos of young Chris, because it's just like, oh, it's like an NFT for me.
That's troubling. You need better hobbies. Just to be clear.
Chris Coin. Invest in Chris Manning.
You'll lose lots of money. Just to be clear, for the record, my dad's twin brother, Uncle Henry, he's a listener of the podcast, Evan, to be
Shouts
clear.
to Uncle Henry.
He gave me that jersey when I was a child, and I'm clearly very young in that photo. And I will be at Game 3 on Saturday wearing a white Guardians jersey with Jose Ramirez on the back. I'll be wearing my hat with the weird little flag logo. And you know what? Let's go Guards. Guards in 5. I know they lost game 1. Guards in 5.
I agree, Guards in 5. But hey, man, don't worry. There's photos of me wearing a fully dripped out Cincinnati Bengals tracksuit with matching Jordan 1s on them that my dad's friend bought for me when I was a kid, just to upset my mom because she's a Steelers fan. And
Steelers. I think we all can agree no one really likes the Steelers except for your. I have some Steelers fans, like friends that are.
I have Yinzer family members. If you know, you know how they feel about Mike Tomlin after a loss. So that's all I'm gonna go with that.
Just Evan, one word: Pittsburgh sandwiches, like a Permanente Bros, or a Chicago beef sandwich.
Well, now that I'm on new medication,
one word. We're out of time. Pick the sandwich.
Pittsburgh.
Okay. I think I'll go Chicago, but maybe that's because I really like the Bear. Okay. That's going to be it. We're going to be back last 2 episodes of this week before the preseason game on Friday. We're going to just make some predictions. We're going to just throw some stuff out there. Some of this will be through the lens of betting lines from our friends at BetOnline. You know, they have over-unders. They have Coach of the Year odds. They have MVP. Like, we're going to go do some of that, and then just there's some predictions we'll make about this upcoming Cavs season. Thanks again for making us your first listen every day. This episode was produced by Jake Stevens. Someone is probably feeding him Vanilla Ice Cube right now like he's in a Tyler, Creator song. Thanks, and also go check out Locked On Fantasy Basketball, hosted by Josh Lloyd. It's the number 1 daily fantasy basketball show on the planet. Locked On Fantasy Basketball is free and available wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Chris. That's Evan. We're getting into games again. It's fun. Hope you guys join us again for these next 2 episodes and all season long.